When we take a look at the stakeholders, we've kind of gone over their roles for related service providers, but when we really consider the perspectives for our the people that we collaborate with and our related service providers and our instructors in general overall of collaboration, there are some factors that we need to consider deeply before and after and during collaboration. The kind of the caution I have is that I know that collaboration looks different in many schools, many districts, and across our state and our country. It depends upon the individuals that are either asked to work together, forced to work together, or plan to work together. So there are a lot of nuances and subjective pieces to this that I'd like you to consider as we think about our perspectives and the work that we do with the other professionals in special education. There are six other factors, and I will briefly go over these and provide you with more information about the resource that I've used. When you consider working with other professionals in special education, you have to consider tradition. Those that have thought that we've always done it this way, so we will continue to do it this way. This is especially hard as a new educator or professional in a building or program when there are age differences. If you're a young teacher with people that have a lot more experience in the field, some of the traditional factors that might play into this is some people might see special education as a place to fix things. There might be differing perspectives when it comes to tradition about the labels that we use in special education, different expectations about family involvement and the cultural and diversity of those families. There might be traditions of anti-collaboration in your school where teachers teach in silos, and that's the way it's always been done. And again, it might be a tradition that there are certain experts in the field. There are consultants, there are teachers, there are speech and language, and you're your expert and stay in your lane for related services. So you have to consider those traditions to work around them when appropriate and with them when it fits the student's need. Time is another tradition, and this is a real issue. This is a need, it's a real issue, and I think it only continues to be a deeper issue in our schools. We unfortunately need to rely on creative solutions, especially with our related services professionals. There is kind of a tradition about instructional collaboration, common planning time between grade levels, and if you're lucky with special education. But we need to include all members of that IEP team. And I know how difficult that is in my experience, if you're a special education teacher and your speech and language person is in your building once a week, every 2 weeks. That's really tough. And unfortunately, right now, in our field of education, we continue to rely on creative solutions, but we need to always kind of remember that as a factor when we plan and think about the stakeholders in our special education services. Territory will always be an issue, a factor. Teachers have ownership of their space. All professionals do. Lots of teachers, special education teachers and general education teachers, think of students as my students, my classroom. As a special education and general education instructor, we need to be a little more nuanced and welcoming. And especially in this case, Mrs. Arthur is kind of acting as Martin's manager, his case manager. She's frustrated. She's managing this three-ring circus that is Martin's individualized education. And we need to consider the territories, either the lack of a territory as a related service professional that travels, or the true territory that a gen ed teacher and a special ed teacher might experience or feel. Taxonomy is another piece. We can talk about the models that we've already talked about throughout the semester, the social model, the medical model, the charity model. That's definitely a part of the taxonomy, the cognitive way that we think about how our actions and our professions. We also need to consider that different members of the team will consider the cognitive taxonomy. The academics are more important. A social worker or a special education teacher might come in and think that the affective, the social emotional learning is more important and a bigger perspective. And an occupational therapist or a special education teacher might come in and highlight the sensory or social parts of things. We need to make sure that we're considering all those different perspectives and pulling those in, which is really what we consider in this case study. The last two are a little bit smaller factors, but something we need to be mindful of. The fact that all of us have different talents. When you talk about collaborative work, you're really talking about group talent and being a team, which is not happening in this case with Martin, versus a related service provider, maybe with a real expertise in something that comes in and says, I've got this. If you've got a speech and language person that can help with the social, or an occupational therapist that can really help with some of those writing issues, come in, meet with the team, say, I got this. I know what we can do. I have excellent strategies, but also works to connect with your team and train your team. Trust is the last factor, and not a small factor. Special education teachers and general education teachers need to share their territories, manage teams with respect. They need to be open to sharing, and they need to act with authenticity and transparency to be able to work together and pull together a team. Not something we always think about when we sign on to be educators, that we will also be and act somewhat as managers to build that trust in a team. These are some extra factors I pulled from one of my resources that I've cited and can provide you with more resources and more information about if you're curious. But be sure to pull in and think about the roles of the stakeholders in this case and the perspectives or factors they might be thinking about.